New year comes with new year deals. Renew your corporate subscription and get a bonus. Subscribe to Nation e-paper for 3 months and get 1 week absolutely free. 6 months and get 2 weeks absolutely free. 1 year and get 3 weeks absolutely free. To sign up, visit epaper.nationmedia.com or email subscription@ke.nationmedia.com. Offer valid till 28th February 2021.
I'm in Watamu along Kenya's coastline, which is commonly associated with tourists and white sandy beaches. But the locals have found hidden treasures in butterfly farming.
When I go back to school, I hope that I can sit for my exams without being disturbed by another lockdown, and I hope that I would have managed to thoroughly keep up with my studies by then also.
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
This is NTV.
Greetings and salutations, East Africa, and welcome to your world on this first day of February. And speaking of which, it is the month of love, and we pray lots of it your way. And now that we're talking about love among couples is constantly put to test by many circumstances. This morning, we focus on childlessness, or what is referred to in medical terms, infertility. And this is a subject many would rather have in harsh tones or are very quick to frown upon, and one that strains many couples with a desire to have children. So today we shed light on what causes infertility, why some people and not others, and is there a treatment for it? Well, these and other questions will be answered in a moment as we hear from those who have experienced waiting wombs and also from a specialist. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this is your world. As I mentioned, today we pay attention to reproductive health with special focus on infertility. Tanzania's president raises concerns doubting the validity of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Maybe just to share a few tips. Number one, do not use this line. Let's agree.
Well, there are those who celebrate when the baby is born, and for others, it actually represents perhaps fading dreams. Indonesia turns train carriages into a COVID-19 hospital amid a surge in cases. Thank you for joining us on this broadcast. As I mentioned, today we focus on our reproductive health, special focus on infertility. And our question of the day to you is, do you know someone or have you faced infertility? What are the challenges in getting treatment for the same? Talk to us. That hashtag is a new normal, and you can also call us using the numbers at the bottom of your screen, and we'd really like to hear from you in as far as your experience is concerned. But for now, let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19 around the world. And earlier on, I actually had the overall numbers for the world. Let me see if I can get those back in a moment. But I know this morning, yes, we actually stand at 103,524,805 cases confirmed around the world. Out of that number, 75,132,535 have recovered from COVID-19, and unfortunately 2,237,746 people have died around the world due to COVID-19. In Kenya, that number stands at 100,773 confirmed cases this far. 83,907 have recovered from the same. And unfortunately, we have lost 1,763 Kenyans to COVID-19. Remember the protocols in ensuring that you deter the contracting COVID-19. Wear your mask, social distance, and of course, wash your hands with soap and water. And if you can't get to that on a regular, use your alcohol-based sanitizer. To our day stories this morning with his Rwandan-born wife, Defroza, Elaine Gauthier has devoted decades of his life to tracking down genocide suspects who have found refuge in France. They have been nicknamed the Colors Fields of Rwanda after Nazi hunters surged and beat Colors Fields, fighting to prevent evil from being consigned to a footnote of history. Our life changed nearly 27 years ago after the genocide. Gauthier still gets emotional talking about the day he had to tell Defroza that her mother, Susanna, had been shot outside the church in a Kigali parish where she had taken refuge. April 6th, 1994, that's when our lives changed. A catalyst in our lives, like all victims and their families. Elsewhere, as they wait the nationwide vaccine rollout in South Africa, Soweto residents are left with mixed feelings. The country is expecting its first batch of coronavirus jabs by the end of January 2021.
I'm afraid because always when a person gets introduction, he just moves. So we don't trust.
I'm not sure about it, but we'll see if they inject other people's, how to it gets them to get healed or what. Because this thing, we don't know where it's going to end, when, where, we don't know. That's what we want to know. Like, I want to get that vaccine, but I'm not sure with it.
When one of the parliament people injects in something like that, or a sick person injects and he becomes okay, I'll be sure. And then I'll be good with that I will also vaccine. I'm not sure.
I would say it's man-made, and now they try to reverse it, and it's out of their hand, it's out of their control. They can no longer be able to cure it. They made it, and now to get rid of it is difficult.
Now, Somalia is under growing pressure to explain the fate of soldiers whose families fear they were deployed in secret from training camps in neighboring Eritrea to fight in northern Ethiopia. The government has strenuously denied allegations that Somali troops were sent to battlefields in Tigray, where Ethiopian federal troops have been fighting with regional forces since November. Asylum lawmakers have written to Somalia's president appealing for information on behalf of desperate parents who say their sons in uniform have gone missing and they have reason to believe they could be in Tigray. Hussein Ibrahim says, I last spoke with my son 22 days ago. He told me he was fine but concerned because some of his comrades were relocated from the camp and he did not know to where. Now, closer home, Tanzanian President John Magufuli has called into question the efficacy of some vaccines against COVID-19 at an event in the town of Chato, saying some vaccines are not intended for the good of our nation and that people who had sought vaccines overseas instead brought the virus back with them. Magufuli has consistently downplayed the seriousness of the pandemic, and the government has not published infection figures since April of 2020.
Ninajua wapo baadhi ya Watanzania hata wameondoka ndani ya nchi na kukimbilia maeneo mengine na kwenda kuchanjwa, na walipochanjwa huko wamekuja huko wametuletea corona ambayo ni ajabu ajabu. Simameni imara, chanjo hazifai kugutu kama uliokuwa nao wewe. Kwa hiyo niombe sana Wizara ya Afya, sio pia chanjo ni ya maana kwa taifa letu. Sio kila chanjo ina faida kwetu. Ni lazima Watanzania tuwe macho. Ni lazima Watanzania tuwe waangalifu. Tuendelee kumtanguliza Mungu wetu, huku tukichukua tahadhari za kiafya kadri tutakavyokuwa tunaambiwa na wataalamu wetu. Lakini tujihadhari sana. Tumeweza kukaa zaidi ya mwaka mzima na kitu Tanzania tukiwa hatuna corona. Hapa hakuna aliyevaa barakoa.
Waheshimiwa wabunge, wakuu wa taasisi mbalimbali, tuendelee. DJ, hebu tupe mziki kwa chini. Haraka DJ.
Well, back home and to our conversation of the day, and we start off with something that will give us better perspective. In Kenya, 3 out of 10 women risk being divorced or separated due to fertility issues. And even though infertility affects both men and women, the women often bear the emotional stigma of a couple's infertility. NTV's Eunice Omolo sat down with some of these women who opened up about the shame of infertility in this short excerpt of her special feature.
Kwa ndoa karibu miaka saizi miaka inaenda hii ni mwaka 10 na ngapi 19. Na sasa changamoto yenye napitia bila nikuja kuoleka, sikujua pia mimi inaweza fanana hivi, lakini kukaa na kuishi sasa nikaona inakuwa vigumu kupata mtoto. Lakini sasa mzee naye sasa nafika wakati mzee mwenye nakaa na yeye anachukua kama mtu anandharau. Nilifika wakati sasa nikasema mimi dunia inaniacha. Mzee akitoka huko, huyu mtu hazai, huyu mtu anajazia choo. Nilikwambia uende umekatalia hapa. Nini unatakanga hapa? Sijui nitoto kwa hiyo nyumba mabati ndio uende.
Mary got married as a second wife. The first wife had already bore their husband 9 children. Her duty was to add the man's brood. She and her husband wanted 5. She fell short of the target. Indeed, She missed it all, and from that place of hope, she has fallen to the subject, an easy target of insults and derogatory remarks from the husband.
Alichukua nguo akatupa nje. Kaniambia nitoke. Nafanyanga nini hapa? Tena nikachukua nguo tena nikarudisha kwa nyumba. Lakini mimi ndani ya moyo wangu sina neno. Yote namwachia Mungu.
Well, the grim reality that those that have to deal with infertility have to live on a daily basis. But as we said earlier on, a lot of what they have to go through is actually based on ignorance, especially from those that really judge them harshly. And that's why today we'd like to understand it from the science point of view. And that's why we have a doctor in studio with us, and that is Dr. Kireki Omanwe. He is a renowned gynecologist and, of course, a fertility expert. And we're also joined by those that walk in their shoes. And in the other studio, I'm joined by editor Hadassah Tripp. She is the executive director at the Waiting Wombs Trust herself. She's got lived experience with this topic, and she'll share her story as we go along. Now, I'm expecting to be joined by a couple from the home in Limuru even as they help us understand, because remember, as we said earlier, this also affects men just as much as it affects the women. So to start us off, Dr. I think it is important that we define infertility from a medical point of view.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for welcoming me to the studio. It's always nice to come and discuss some of these topics which are important to all of our people and ourselves. It's a very sad excerpt that we've just watched about that lady who has been married for 19 years and was not able to have a family, to have a child. And of course, there's a lot of issues which come with that, socially, culturally, and so on. I see such cases. Sometimes I see patients who have tried to have babies for 20 years or more, and some of them for about a year and so on. So when it comes to the definition of infertility, according to the World Health Organization, infertility actually is defined, there are two terms. One is primary infertility, whereby a couple have been trying to have a baby, and by trying it means that they have been having regular intercourse twice or three times a week. There is no use of contraception by the lady or by the gentleman by using condoms, and a year has passed and nothing is there, nothing to show for the work that they have been doing. That is primary infertility. When it comes to secondary infertility, sort of the same principles apply, that a couple has been trying to have a baby. Again, the timelines are the same, it's about a year. Unless they are older, because age is also a very big factor when it comes to women. They've been trying to have a baby for a year. They have intercourse twice or three times a week. There is no contraception use, and the lady is not breastfeeding, because regular breastfeeding can actually act as contraception. Now, the only difference between primary and secondary, the secondary one, they have had a pregnancy in the past, or they have children and they're trying to have another child or other children. That is the main difference. Now, when you look at the statistics in this country, a very big problem, that is one example that we've just had, which is very sad and very typical. One of my colleagues has done a study, did a study not too long ago, and it is estimated that in this part of the world, infertility affects about 15 to 20% of the population. In some places, it goes even up to 30% of the population, which is paradoxical, because this part of the world is where we have the highest number of children being born, and then paradoxically, we have the highest number of couples who are trying to have babies, and it is not happening. Somebody actually wrote an article, and he actually said that there is an infertility belt which runs right from the south of Africa, passes through the central part of Africa, passes through some parts of Tanzania. Kenya is also involved, goes all the way to West Africa. Why is it called an infertility belt? Because the highest number of infertility cases are actually found in this area. Again, paradoxical. Again, paradoxical. Because in this place where you have the highest number of fertility, you have the highest number of infertility cases as well.
Okay, so I think at this point it would be important to understand what are normally the main causes of infertility in both men and women, because we're saying it calls for both parties.
Yes, it does. Now, in most cases, as we actually saw in that clip again, the lady bore the brunt of the infertility. She came in as a second wife. You see, the second wife or somebody later on came in as a second wife. Now, infertility affects both men and women. But unfortunately, it is women who actually bear the brunt of, the infertility. Why? Simply because they're the ones who actually show the fruits of what has been happening. So if it affects men, and it does affect men, because about 40% of the cases of infertility are actually, the causes are actually on the male side of things. About 30-35% are on the female side of things, and then about 10-15% from both male and female, and then a small percentage, maybe about 2-5% are unknown. Okay. Now, when it comes to, let me start with men, or ladies, because ladies first, as we all say. Age is a very big factor. What age are we talking about here? We are talking about an age of 35 years or more. From 35 years, the chances of getting pregnant actually start decreasing. Why is that so? Simply because ladies are born with a set number of eggs. And every time a woman has a period, the monthly period that they do have, they lose about 700 to 800 eggs. And unfortunately for women, as opposed to men, they do not regenerate. They do not produce new eggs as they progress in life.
I keep saying that's the biggest setup we have in life.
Unfortunately, very unfair, I think. Very unfair. So when we get to 35, imagine if a lady started having periods at around 12-13 years, which is basically the average age of menstruation. By the time you're 35, you've been having periods for about 20, 22, 23, 24 years. Imagine you'll be losing 800 eggs every month. So multiply 800 eggs by 12, which is yearly, by 24, the number of eggs will have reduced quite drastically. So at 35, 36, the numbers keep dropping. When it gets to 40, the chances of having a baby, the first one, we're talking about the first baby, is about 3 to 5%. When it gets to more than 40, it comes to about 1 or less than 1%. So at 45, patients who are trying to have a baby at 45 for the first time, the chances are less than 1%, almost zero, if anything. That is one. Again, the other thing that we need to talk about here is the quality of the eggs. The quality of the eggs deteriorates with time. The chromosome, or the genetic material which is inside the eggs, that which determines what height you're going to be, your baby is going to be, what color, skin is going to have, and so on and so forth. They also start getting old. And this predisposes the ladies, older ladies, to having children with problems, chromosomal issues, malformations, and so on. So, first of all, there's a problem in getting pregnant. And the second thing is, once they do get pregnant, these pregnancies are prone to have a lot of issues. That is why you see in older women, 38, 40, and so on, have higher chances of having children with, let's say, Down syndrome, which is very, very common, and it's because of the aging of the genetic material. Now, that is one of the biggest issues. The other issues which, without any order, are, for example, blocked tubes. In this part of the world, 80 to 85% of the women that I see have a problem with blocked tubes. Whether it is blocked halfway, whether it's completely blocked, whether it is both tubes are blocked, whether they have fluid in the tubes, and so on. This is principally caused by infection. Some of the infections are quiet, in that the ladies may actually not know that they have that infection. I had a patient the other day who who, after 4 years of trying, they came to see me. The gentleman was perfect. I actually told him, you can actually take this sample of yours and put it on the wall. And every time people come and say, you know, this is me because I'm okay. I mean, that feels nice for him. But the lady had a problem with the tubes. Unfortunately, the tubes were blocked and they had fluid in them. And the question that arose was, what happened? How did it happen? How come? Can we have treatment? If we do give treatment, I mean, I understand if it's an infection, you can always give an antibiotic and so on. But there are other intricate issues which we may not understand, in that once that infection, because we call it an ascending infection from the vagina, nota bene, the vagina has a lot of flora, bacteria, vaginal flora. There are billions of bacteria there, which are actually beneficial to the reproductive system, as it were. But once that balance has been sort of destabilized, then the infections can actually ascend and go and have issues, cause blocked tubes and so on. So the issue is, why can't she have treatment? Why can't we give her antibiotics, for example, so that she can, you know, we can get rid of the infection, which has caused these blocked tubes? And I say, number one, we don't know when that infection occurred. Number two, when you look at what you call HSG, which shows us whether the tubes are blocked, when an infection occurs, the immune system sends soldiers to go and limit that infection to one place. And when that happens, it causes some scarring, it causes some sticking together of tissues, such that to limit that infection, and that actually is one of the things that causes that. Okay. So whether we give any treatment, then it will actually not help much. So blocked tubes is one of the other causes. We have what we call fibroids. There are women who have huge fibroids and have no problems at all. A priori, we can also talk about the issue of percentages. In this part of the world, or women basically of African origin, wherever they are, 40 to 60% of them are going to have fibroids at some point in their reproductive period. A colleague of mine wrote an article and said, mine is 100, what is yours? What basically was saying that he had removed 100 fibroids from a lady. The most I have removed is 70. He was 100, wow. You know, and so on. We see some huge distortions of the uterus and so on because of those fibroids. Sometimes it's not so much as the fibroids, the size, the location is also very important, especially if they're located in what you call the cavity where the baby actually does implant and grow. That one causes issues, it causes problems. If they are outside the cavity, then the size actually does come into play, because remember, when a baby implants, a lot of blood starts circulating actually into the womb, because that baby has to get a lot of nutrition. And as more of that blood circulates in the womb, those fibroids are also going to take advantage of that blood, so they'll start growing, you know, with the pregnancy. And sometimes ladies lose pregnancies because of fibroids. We have issues with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which in a way can be a good thing and a bad thing. This is a situation whereby you have women who have a lot of what we call cysts, multi-cysts. They are not really big cysts, because a cyst in the gynecological sense of the word is slightly different from what we call polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, these ladies have a lot of problems. Most of them, they have issues with irregular periods. Some of them have skip periods for 6 months, for 2 years, and so on. They have issues with acne. So their skin, you know, they have a lot of problems with pimples. They have issues with, some of them have a beard, and so on. They have issues with being overweight, low libido, bloatedness, and so on and so forth. All this affects their infertility. A big problem as well is what we call endometriosis, which affects about 5 to 10% of the young women who come to us for fertility, who have issues with getting pregnant. Now, when you talk about endometriosis, this is where a bit of the lining of the womb, which normally comes out during the periods, gets implanted in what you call an ectopic area, that is outside the womb. And this can be on the tubes, for example. It can be on the ovaries, which are the most common site sites, but it can also be in other places. Can it be in the gut? It can be where we've done a cesarean section, for example, and so on and so forth. This is an immunological disorder which causes a lot of problems. It can be mild, it can be severe, and for when it is severe, basically everything, we have what is called a frozen pelvis. These ladies will not have a chance of having a baby normally, because you find their tubes and other organs inside there are all mixed up and stuck together. There is no way they are going to have a baby properly. We talk about other causes as well.
Yeah.
Talk about you know, common things, call them common, but eating, what we're eating and what we are drinking.
Okay, I'd like you to get into the details of that as you also tell us what causes the same in men.
Yes.
Let's hear from Hadassah. You have walked these shoes for how long now?
15 years now, Gladys.
15 years. And Daktari has listed quite a long list of the causes of infertility in women. Which one do you identify with?
Endometriosis, and one more that is not mentioned, adenomyosis, but they are kind of related, and cysts and fibroids.
Okay. Yeah. So at what point of your journey did you discover that you could not be able to conceive?
Just after marriage, I think 2 years after marriage, when I realized that things were not happening, I was a bit concerned, and we ended up going for checkup. But what took me to the hospital was actually pain, not trying to have a child. I was in very severe pain, period pains. And so when we went for checkup, then my diagnosis was ovarian cysts, and then later on fibroids, and along the journey, endometriosis, and then adenomyosis. So it's been just a journey, the whole 15 years.
Okay, and at this point, as we've seen in the excerpt before, and Daktari is saying, did the husband get to be checked?
Yes, very important, because in an African setup, people assume that infertility only affects women. It's vital that men get checked, and yes, my husband accompanied me, and he was actually checked.
Okay, so when you talk about endometriosis, it sounds like it is the one that is actually primary to everything else. Does it mean since you got the surgery for the fibroids and cysts, those have never bothered you again?
Sorry, just come again?
Saying that you have done a surgery on the fibroids and cysts, have those ever bothered you again?
Yes, they have. After the surgery for cysts and fibroids, actually I've had 4 surgeries. The last one was in 2018.
Oh.
And so I remember doing the first, then the second, but my pain was excruciating. Like my endometriosis was severe. So the whole period I was still waiting, trying to have a child. I was seeking help, to at least just to improve my quality of life. And so, yes, it's been a bother still. My last surgery really, really helped. My quality of life has improved. I believe my chances of conceiving have also improved. But hey, conception is divine.
As they say. So Daktari, she touches on the fact that there is something over and above endometriosis, which is?
She mentioned adenomyosis.
Yes, so exactly what is that?
Yes. Now, adenomyosis, remember I mentioned that that bit of that tissue which comes out during the period gets embedded in a place which is outside the womb. We call that endometriosis. In adenomyosis, that bit gets embedded in the muscle of the womb itself. So that is adenomyosis. And it has similar symptoms to endometriosis. Remember, she said that her periods were excruciating, which is actually one of the red flags that when a patient comes trying to have a baby, and when you ask about her periods, and she says, my periods are regular, but they are painful. So the next question we ask is, what do you mean by this pain? When does it start? And usually this pain starts a few days before her period, even up to a week, sometimes 10 days before the period starts. And they are horrible pain. Sometimes these patients are not able to go to work. They're just at home. They are completely paralyzed. She mentioned about quality of life. Her quality of life was actually, you know, most of the time, you find the quality of life of these patients is actually zero, if anything. So, but when the period starts, what is typical again of endometriosis or adenomyosis, that pain slowly starts dissipating until it disappears. And then the other characteristic symptom for this is that it is cyclical. So every month, we are going on the same carousel. So 7 days before the period, the pain starts. It reaches a crescendo right at when the period is supposed to start. When the period starts, the pain starts, you know, dissipating, and it disappears 2-3 days afterwards. And afterwards it's okay. Some discomfort can be there, but again we start again the whole process. A very, very disturbing problem for the patients, because in that place, in that you cannot work normally. The pain, you cannot think properly. We can't talk about intimacy because it's basically not there. Sometimes when they go, when she mentioned that her endometriosis was severe, it can affect the bladder, for example. So when you go for a short call, you find there could be some blood in the urine. It can affect the tubes, what we call the ureters, that bring urine from the kidneys, and it can lead to blockage and swelling and accumulation of urine in the kidneys. It can affect the bowels as well, such that when you go for a long call, you actually have blood in the stool as well. So it can be debilitating actually. So it is a big problem. Now, she also mentioned the number of surgeries that she has had. She has had 4 surgeries. I mean, because the first time you do it, you go in, the first time should be the best, as it were, such that the person who does this surgery should remove as much of this endometriosis as possible. So if it is not done well, then the second time or the subsequent times, it's going to be more complicated. So the more times you have the surgery, the more complicated it becomes, the higher the chances of, you know, a post-operative or even intraoperative complications occurring.
All right. Now let's hear from somebody else, and this is a couple I was talking about, Samuel and Jacinta Kiugi, joining us all the way from their home in Limuru. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'll start off with you, Jacinta. Daktari has mentioned the various causes of infertility. For you, what do you identify with? What were you told was the issue when you went for testing?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gladys, because of the question. I would say that listening to the issues that the Daktari have mentioned is that I would identify with HSD, which I was done when I was 3 years in the marriage, and I had one of the tubes blocked. Yes, that one is the only one that I would really identify with.
Okay, and at this point, even as we ask Hadassah, did the husband also undergo the test? Because we said this, it takes two to tango. Can you hear me, Jacinta?
Yes, sorry, I didn't get that.
So I was asking, did Babanjeri go for testing? Samuel, you can speak for yourself.
Yes, he can talk. He's here.
Yes, quite an interesting topic here. Yes, I went for the test as well. In fact, we did it together. So when the doctor said that she have to go under the test, and they just again said, even me, and I said, I'm okay with that. And after they did the test, they found that I had low sperm count.
Okay, and at this point, how many years into the marriage was it?
It was 8.5 years into the marriage.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, so in between you had done various tests, but at this point, both of you finally had an answer?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so now we introduce the causes for the men. Daktari, I'd like you to list them if you can, at least briefly, so that the men can understand exactly what infertility looks like.
Number one, let me commend Jacinta and her husband.
Yes.
She has a very supportive husband. That actually the gentleman agreed to go for a semen test is actually very commendable, because most of us men don't like it. What happens is that most of the patients that I see, when I tell them, you need to have this test done, most of the time the ladies come alone and they say, mzee amenituma, mimi nipimwe kwanza. Or they just come and say, Daktari, I just wanted to have myself sorted out first. Let me know. Once I'm clear, I have a clean bill of health, then I'll go and tell my husband. Now, this brings in the issue of the stigma again, that actually men don't do what? Don't have issues with infertility. We do have issues with infertility. And he mentioned something there. He had a low sperm count. That is one of the problems. Now, when a gentleman gives a semen sample, there are several things that we look at. We look at the volume of the ejaculate. Most of the time, 99% of the time, they give this sample by masturbation, either in the clinic, in the lab, or usually at home, and they bring it to the lab. But then the time is also of essence. So issues with we look at the volume. How much is it? Should be 1.5 milliliters or more. We look at what you call pH. Now, this is something which is fantastic. God has created us in such a way that in the woman's vagina, it's very acidic. But the man's sperm is alkaline. So when they meet there, it becomes neutral, such that it is easy for the sperm to actually survive in that neutral environment so that it can do what it is supposed to do. So we look at the pH. We look at the number of sperms in 1 milliliter, what we call concentration. We look at the total number of sperms in that ejaculate. So for example, if the volume is, let's say, 3 milliliters, and the concentration is, let's say, 20 million, so the total count will be 60 million, which is okay, because we need about 40 million or more. In the concentration, we need 15 million sperms or more. Then we look at how those sperms swim, because we want them to swim as fast as possible. There are 3 types of motility that we look at. We look at what is called very fast type A, and then we look at type B, which are not as fast. If we call the type A the sprinters, then the type B will be the long distance runners, the Kenyans for that matter.
Yeah.
So we put the A and B together, and we're supposed to have at least 40% or more. Then we look at the normal forms. How many of those 60 million sperms are actually normal? And what do we mean by normal? Here we mean a sperm which has a nice head, because basically that is where the genetic material is, which is going to interact with an egg and actually create a baby. So that head has to be nice and oval. It has to have a neck piece, and then it has to have a tail. Now, in each and every of these pieces, there are things which actually help that sperm to actually be normal and swim to where it is supposed to get to. And these normal forms are supposed to be at least 4% or more. So when Babanjeri mentioned that he had low sperm count, so most probably that concentration was low, and the total number of sperms was also low. So that is one of the reasons of infertility. So you may have low sperm count, you may have a poor motility, you may have abnormal forms which are more, and what we call teratospermia. Now, you may also have what is called azoospermia, meaning there is no sperm at all. Again, you remember we talked about blocked tubes in ladies?
Yes.
We can talk about blocked tubes in men as well, because men also have blocked tubes. So sperm is produced elsewhere, it is stored elsewhere. This is how intricate the whole process is. So when a man has intercourse, that sperm which is stored elsewhere, in microseconds, actually leaves the storage place, passes through the prostate, mixes with the seminal fluids, and comes out as an ejaculate. Now, those tubes can be blocked, again, because of sexually transmitted diseases, infections. So when they block that, obviously, what will come out is basically the seminal fluid. Remember, they are stored elsewhere, the tubes are blocked, so there is no sperm coming down. So that can be a problem. You may have a problem with trauma, especially You know how men are. We have a lot of testosterone. We like, contact games, football, rugby, karate, and so on. Sometimes you watch football, and when a ball is hit and hits someone, and the way he rolls on the ground, you actually feel pain on his behalf. So later on, this can have consequences. Because these gentlemen, even though that can be treated, the pain and so on and so forth, that can have, problems, that can cause problems later on. We have problems with undescended testicles, because normally when a baby boy is in the mother's womb, in what you call embryology, the testicles actually descend through what we call the inguinal canal and into the scrotum. Sometimes they don't, or sometimes one of them descends and the other one doesn't. So everything they do work well. They produce testosterone. These guys look okay. They are muscular and everything, but they don't produce any sperm because the testicles are not doing what they are supposed to do in terms of production of sperm. Cigarette smoking, chewing mirror, and of late I have seen guys chew, what is this thing called? Mogoka. Yes. Horrible stuff. In the cigarette smoke itself, we have about 2,000 to 3,000 chemicals. And some of these chemicals actually go and displace the natural chemicals which are produced in the body, which helps the sperm to swim. For example, you have heavy metals like cadmium. Cadmium displaces zinc, and zinc is very, very important in how the sperms swim. So when this is displaced and cadmium takes its place, so obviously those sperms are not going to swim the way they are supposed to swim. Number two, problems with erections. The chewing of the mirror and the mogoka actually affects issues in the bedroom. The other day I met a couple, guys who do weightlifting. I mean, they look nice with the big muscles and everything and so on. But the problem is that they use a lot of what we call anabolic steroids. What anabolic steroids do is that they increase the muscle, they increase water retention, but then, unfortunately, they reduce the testicular size. Sometimes they disappear completely. So you find up here everything is okay, but down there is nothing. So ladies, ogle at these men and they look at them and they are whatever, but these guys can't do anything most of the time, unfortunately. So we need to think about that. We also need to think about the normal things. We talked about eating and drinking. Yes. The foods that we eat. In our societies, we think that once a man has a big public opinion, pot belly, he is doing very well. And also, we also like our women to be well endowed. So when we find a gentleman has a public opinion, the lady also is well endowed. It's like having sex with two pillows in front of you. That may not happen, or if it happens, then it will not happen in the way it is supposed to happen. Drinking is also a big problem. Drinking a glass of wine or a bottle of beer may not be an issue, but when you drink 3, 4, 5 bottles of beer, or shots, if they call them shots, I don't know what they call them, and of spirits and so on, actually it may make you feel boisterous and and so on, but in the bedroom department it will actually not help at all. Now, the other things that I mentioned about erection, we have a big problem again in this country. I was talking to one of our senior urologists, and he told me that he's seeing young men who are 20-something who are actually not up to it. Why? Because of this thing called sugar mummies. They are taken over and they're taken to places, and their job is to service, not in a bad way, but service these mature ladies. And physiologically, you can do maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, what we call them, rounds or whatever a night. But these ladies want more. So what do these young men do? They take the blue pills. So they start taking the blue pills very early. Their bodies actually tolerate more and more of that, which is dangerous in itself to these young men. And it reaches a place where these blue pills are not working any longer. So you find a young man of 26, 27 not being able to do what he's supposed to do. you know, which is very sad as well.
That is definitely food for thought. And I think the men at this point, this is such important information, even as we try to understand exactly what causes infertility. Remember, we've heard of it, we probably know somebody who's going through it, but we've really never understood the science behind it. And that's why Daktari is breaking it down so that you understand that it starts from the science before it becomes a societal issue. And I'm told we have somebody on the line with a question. Steve, what's your question or comment?
Okay, I've been married for 4 years now.
Please speak up, Steve.
I'm saying
Yes?
I've been married for 4 years now.
Yes, Steve, we can hear you.
And not yet got a child. I needed some advice from the doctor.
Okay. All right, Steve, are you still there?
Yeah.
Have you ever gone for testing?
No.
Okay. And have you taken your wife for testing?
No.
All right. Okay. And you said you've been married for 4 years?
Exactly.
Okay. So, Daktari, the question to Daktari is?
Just his recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Asante, Steve, for calling. Daktari, recommendation?
Recommendation. 4 years, marriage, no baby. So we don't know, number one, whether they are living together, whether they are having intercourse, how often they are having intercourse. Do we know whether the wife, the lady has a baby or doesn't have a baby? So this is very important information because it will point us to where the possible problem could be. So we start with the basics. For the gentleman, a simple semen test or sperm test in a good laboratory, because there are some laboratories when they do that that test, when the results come out, they really don't help you a lot. So a sperm analysis in a good lab, and before he goes for the semen test, he needs to abstain from intercourse for 3 to 5 days. Some say even up to a week, but that is fine. For the lady, we also need to find out whether she's also okay. We know we need to do the simple test that we mentioned. But remember the lady from the couple from Limuru, they mentioned about HSG. The HSG will give us an idea about how her tubes are. Number one, whether they are open, they are not open. If they are not open, where are they blocked? If there is any fluid in them, etc. We need to do a hormone test. Number one, to have a look at the potential eggs which are still remaining, you know, in this lady's ovaries, because again, age, he didn't tell us the age of the wife. Very important as well. We also need to do some hormone tests to check what is called the thyroid gland, a very, very important gland, placed just here, just above, next to the voice box. It controls actually most of the functions of the body. So if the levels of what we call TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, are either elevated or they are low, they will affect the way the body behaves, and they will definitely affect getting pregnant, or if she does get pregnant, whether she'll be able to carry that baby to term. The other thing which is also quite common is what is called prolactin. Prolactin is a hormone which normally is produced at a very high level when a woman is pregnant. Why? Because the body knows that there is somebody who's going to make use of that milk, because it helps the breast to produce milk. Now, sometimes it can be elevated for whatever reason. And the reasons can be either there is a growth somewhere in the brain where you have that prolactin at a very high level, but luckily this is a very straightforward neurosurgical procedures which can be done to remove it. Sometimes stress can also increase the prolactin and so on. So if the prolactin level is elevated and a woman is not pregnant, the body, again, it's fantastic the way God has created us. The body switches itself off because it thinks that it is pregnant. So if a woman is pregnant, she will not get pregnant. All right?
Yes.
So when that prolactin level is elevated, the body knows that there is somebody who is going to use that milk. So don't get pregnant. So we need to check this. We also need to do a scan just to look at the ovaries and also to look at the womb, because these are important. Now, once we have done those basics, then we can be able to advise our friend from Migori where the problem is and how we can help him have this baby.
And I'm sure that also answers a lot of questions for our viewers this morning. But remember, if you have any other question, remember our question of the day to you is, do you or know somebody who is facing infertility, and what has been the challenge in getting treatment? Talk to us. That hashtag is new normal. We have Anfield Africa, who says the problem in our country is the time taken before the health officers diagnosed the problem. Took time, the prognosis was poor, but now I got a son after a long time and long-term treatment. Okay, congratulations. Yeah, David Neto says, yes, the couple has tried from hospital to hospital and even to the witch doctors and the herbalists. No solution yet, so they've given up and just being optimistic, praying that one day they'll get a child. And we pray they do, but Daktari will be talking more about this. Abdul Malik says, very timely topic, whereas we have primary and secondary infertilities. Very true, Abdul. Shadrach Ruto says, I'm Shadrach, does masturbation lower the sperm count? Daktari will answer that question right after this short break. And when we come back, we'll now connect the societal point of view in as far as infertility is concerned. And that's why we have those that have walked in these shoes joining us on this conversation, so that we now see how we look at things, or we look at it from an ignorance point of view. We'll be right back.
Maji mdosi wangu ametupa simu yangu ndani ya maji.
Mdosi wako kwa sawa? Venye Nkirota ameniambia ajui, na akimpigia simu ashiki. Hi guy, what the?
For the women who deserve more, Moped is now in Kenya and more than 40 countries. With its nylon-free surface, new Moped has unique softness and up to 100% protection. Your skin will love it.
Breaking news from Molfix. Let's see what they're developing right now.
Molfix pants with anatomic fit technology. New Molfix pants, an invention from babies for babies.
You should also try Molfix.
We are Nation, Africa's independent media brand. We are committed to empowering all Africans, from the young to the old, from the curious to the educated, and from the heart of the cities to the rural areas. We are Nation. Join us, because if you want to get far, you do it together. Nation. Empower Africa.
Acha nikae kwenye mpini, hafi njaa.
Na kila mmoja ana riziki yake.
Mimi vile na hustle hivi, hii ndio jasho langu.
Kila Jumanne katika NTV jioni tutapata makala maalum ya jasho langu, kuangazia raha na karaha, heri na shari za watu katika kazi na vibarua mbalimbali.
Mimi Max Riala, na kuunda glass ndilo jasho langu.
Na hii ndio jasho langu.
Naitwa The African Dogman, na hii ndio haso yangu.
Nami ni Daniel Mule, na hili ndilo jasho langu.
Go get me my allergy medication.
Sikununua.
Are you serious?
Usijali saa, nilinunua na nikaweka kwa drawer hapo kwa bathroom yako. Kama utakuwa unafanya kazi kama akili haiko hapa, fadhali tu pumzike, nitakusaidia kazi.
I agree with Brenda. Some time off would do you good.
Richard amekasirika, amesema mimi nikuje nyumbani mapema.
Ena na rada yake. Revenge.
I'm not feeling too good.
Akiwa ile plan yako ikuwaka. Pia Richard alikuleo chakula, so pia ni mgonjwa.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Well, thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. This morning, we are focusing on infertility, and helping us understand this better is Dr. Kireki Omano. He's a gynecologist and fertility expert. We also have Editor Hadassa, who is the executive director at Waiting Wombs Trust, and Samuel and Jacinta Kiugi, who are a couple joining us from Limuru. Jacinta and, of course, her husband and editor have lived experience with infertility, and that's what we're trying to understand better this morning. And speaking of which, we have some calls coming through. Remember, you can reach us on that number at the bottom of your screen, even as you give us your queries or even your comments. Kennedy from Kangemi, what's your question or comment?
Hello, my name is
Yes.
And my question is chewing of that's talking about chewing of.
Say that again. Okay, kindly reduce the volume on your TV.
Okay.
So what's the question?
Talking about chewing of mirror. The doctor says he has issues with the new men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am a security guard at a certain company, at which sometimes we are forced to use the car to keep us awake. The night.
The Mogoka.
Pressure of work, yeah. The Mogoka, the mirror. It sometimes keeps us awake throughout the night, so that at least you cannot sleep because of the fear of losing the job. So we are forced to use the name that to keep us awake. So I really wanted to know what are the repercussions of taking the mirror, and there are serious health issues which can arise from the mirror.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy, for your call. I think Daktari had already mentioned that Mogoka Mira can actually have an impact on your fertility. He will elaborate on the same in a moment. We also had a question on social media, if we can have it up. Okay, so let's start off with Kennedy from Kangemi. I think you just need to reiterate briefly about the impact of some of these drugs.
Yes, some of these drugs that I mentioned are, for example, cigarettes, smoking, and I mentioned that there are about 2,000 to 3,000 chemicals, and some of these chemicals are actually heavy metals, which will get rid of the natural chemicals, which are not chemicals but basically molecules, which are supposed to help in the sperm production and in their activity as well. Now, when it comes to Mira and Mogoka and Bang, or weed as we call it and so on, weed is basically in the same group with cigarettes, but even worse than cigarettes. With the Mogoka, there are some chemicals we call alkaloids. And number one, they cause addiction. Number two, they cause sleeplessness, which is what Kennedy was talking about. And apart from that, some of those chemicals actually go and have an impact in the production of the sperm and also even in having erections as well. So the problems are actually quite complex. So in as much as Kennedy is trying to take the Mogoka to stay awake and keep a job, unfortunately the effects will be further down the road.
Oh, wow. There you have it, Kennedy, and I'm sure you are asking this on behalf of very many men. Now, we also have that other question on social media that was from Shadrach Kiprop, who asked, does masturbation lower the sperm count, Daktari?
Well, we know masturbation is pleasuring oneself. Women use it, men also use it, and so on, for whatever reason, whether it is stress, whatever the reason may be. So does the act of masturbation itself reduce the sperm count? No, it doesn't. So because it's just a release, just like having intercourse, only that this one is self-pleasuring. So it does not reduce the number of sperms.
There we go. All right. So now we said we would like to hear the societal impact when it comes to infertility. And as we said, editor, your journey has been 15 years coming. And in these 15 years, you've seen a lot, heard a lot. Give us a tidbit of what you've had to face in as far as having to pursue getting a child is concerned.
Thank you so much, Gladys. There's a lot of stigmatization that comes with childlessness. And unfortunately, it's a taboo subject in the African society or culture. So most people suffer in silence or just avoid it completely, avoid thinking about it, talking about it, raising it up, it's just in harsh tones. But my journey I've also faced a bit of stigmatization. I've also faced a bit of pressure. My immediate family are very supportive. Even my in-laws are super awesome people. But there's the larger clan that defines a woman with the ability to have children. So when some of us have to wait for very long, because by then I've not ruled myself out in terms of having a child. So when we have to wait for so long, there's so much pressure. Like if I'm to think of the few cases I've had to go through, I talk about them not that I'm still hurt, but also to just try and create awareness. So my pressure came from church, going to church where I wanted support or solace. And I remember an instance where I was in pain, endometriosis pain, and then I had tried getting pregnant that month. My doctor was helping me out. And so I was given some medication that probably Dr. Kireki can comment on. There's some medication that you are given to trigger ovulation or to check if you're ovulating. So this specific month, I had that medication, and I was actually very hopeful that I was pregnant this time. So when I went to church, I realized that I was in so much pain. I stepped out. My tummy was a bit extended because I was bloated. And apparently, the medication had also given me a condition called OHHS, overstimulated ovarian syndrome. So someone walked and just said, "Oh, finally you have it." And in my mind, I was just like, if only you knew what I was going through, if only you had an idea, then you'd just have shut up. Then the other instance was a lady who approached me when we were standing together as women and just asked me, why am I wasting my husband? That what do you do with all these sperms? What do you do with them? In my mind, I was thinking, dear Lord, hold me, hold me. And yeah, then there's also the pressure of going up country for the visits, and the fear is always who's coming with the next jerrycan of herbal medication. This happens across. This is not unique to me. So there's also people who have offer unsolicited advice like try this position, intercourse position, keep yourself raised on a pillow because that's the only way it will happen. You're not doing it right. There's so much. And then there's also the pressure of where do I fall? Like in certain groups in the society where they are mothers, then they're singles, it's very well defined. Then there's us, childless, not by choice. Where do we fall? So in different programs, you'll find that even in a church setup, where we have married and the subjects are about children and parenting, and I'm thinking, okay, where do we fall? So the society has so much pressure, even trying to push my husband to get a second wife, or women coming through to offer to give him children. It happens every other day.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And I'm sure, Jacinta, listening to that, you have a story of your own. You waited 7 years before you were blessed with Njeri. What did you go through?
Gladys, I want to say that it's not an easy journey for anyone. And I experienced a lot of both internal and external pressure, because from internal, there's that part of you that always keep asking, why do I have to go through? Why am I not getting a baby? And looking, maybe I was very young. By then I was only 25. And then I was having so many questions of what may be the cause of all this. And the one thing that was so good for me is that I had a very supportive family, because for the 8 years, none of them ever mentioned anything about us not having a baby. But the society now from the church, because both of us are ministers in the Presbyterian church, so we would have people asking so many questions and wondering why the God we serve, the God we tell them about who does miracles, does not do the same to us. So there was a lot of pressure from friends, from the church, and the society, both in the village, and especially for me as a woman. I had so many people who thought, you know, like the societal stigma. Maybe this girl got married, she had maybe aborted, she had used other drugs. And some women would even tell me that, Isi madam natumia, you know, it's not good for you. And I knew very well I was not using any, but then you don't have to keep explaining to everyone what you're going through. It was not an easy time until when we got a baby. But the good thing with me is that I had a very supportive husband, such that any clinic, any test, wherever we went together. And that really kept us strong and kept us moving. Yes, Gladys.
Okay, now, Samuel, I'm sure the story for you is a little bit different, and especially now that most men would rather not talk about the journey, but you're here to ensure that every man knows wanaume pia upitia mengi. What's your story?
Thank you so much. I would first say it's very painful to lack a child, especially when you have expectation that you get married, and then after a few months you get the report of the good news of a baby who is being processed. But that didn't happen to us, and it was a very painful process. Just as Jacinta has rightly put it, the issue of thinking internally what has happened, and especially with myself, because I have been a very good boy all through, and I didn't like mix myself like other men do. I don't do drugs. I've been just upright man. And so with this issue of not having a child or not conceiving was literally a torture to me psychologically. But because I'm a man of faith, again, I applied my faith and I kept on praying to God. But that notwithstanding, there is a lot of bullying from my colleagues, my friends, who would always make fun of, if you're unable to do it, you can even as well hire us to come and do it for you. There's nothing as painful as that. And again, the issue of, you can't keep on explaining to everyone what is happening. But it was very painful. The society doesn't tolerate people who do not have children. They always think the other things, and even they go to an extent of thinking maybe the miracle that people perform in bed, maybe we don't know how to perform it. But that's very wrong, because that is not the story. The issue of infertility is very painful. So I would say, Gladys, that it hasn't been easy, but I'm happy again because just as Jacinta rightly puts it, we didn't get any pressure from maybe the way I hear people talk about family and all that. Our family have never asked me, like my siblings, they have never asked me what is happening. They were very tolerant with us, and we kept on waiting until the right time came and God blessed us with a child. So what I would say is that the society should not pressurize people. we have this notion when, when we go for marriages, for example, and we go for reception, and they always give the lady the bed, the gift of a bed. And they always keep on saying, we want you to get children. And the pressure is too much. We've had people who are even divorcing because they cannot be able to bear children. You get a wife has been divorced with a lot of discrimination, with a lot of stigma, simply because they could not, conceive. And as you know, many men would not even go for the test. They just want to say, they just shift the blame to the woman, and they say it is the woman who is, barren and all that. They don't want to go and do the test. And I will tell them, it is high time now. Anyone can go through anything. Anyone can be infertile. And there are so many reasons for infertility. And so I would tell my fellow men, even though our ego is just up there, we need to calm down and take consideration and consider ourselves going for a test. And then we'll be able to assess and say, this is what is happening, and you'll be able to do and make decision in the right way. So that is just to say, it isn't easy. It isn't easy. Thank you.
Very well said, Samuel, and we're so glad that you were able to join us this morning, because I have looked for men to talk about this, and you literally are a miracle because you came through last minute, and I'm glad that you're passing on this message to fellow men. And speaking of which, I'm told we have Isaac Mbita who is calling us with a question. Isaac, what is your question or comment? Do we still have Isaac on the line? Okay, if we can find him, I think we have lost him. All right, now, Dr. just listening to what the experiences have been, clearly it is imperative that we started off by explaining what infertility is from the medical terms.
That's right.
Before we hear it from the society's point of view. And when you treat women and men who come through your doors every single day, this is something that is common. Yes. What is it that you help them along? Is there a support group that you send them to? Do you talk to them about the importance of working with others? What's the best way out of this?
Let's take a step a little bit back. Remember the couple from Limuru, 8 years. Hadassah, 15 years, trying to have a baby. These pressures from society. These pressures have always been there. So infertility is not a new problem, because if you take a step back into the Bible, we find couples who are infertile, and the pressures were exactly the same as they are today. Look at Samuel's mother, Penina. What happened to her? She goes to the temple to pray. Why? Because she doesn't have a baby, and her co-wife is actually making fun of her. She's laughing at her and, doing all manner of things. Okay? Look at Rachel, Jacob's second wife, the love of his life. When she sees that Leah, her elder sister, has children, what does she do? She demands that Jacob gives her a child or children. And Jacob becomes exasperated. He says, am I God who gives children? I'm not God who gives children. So what does Rachel do? He says, okay, take my servant and have what? And have children with her. And these children will be mine. And they do that. At the end of the day, she ends up having children as well, 2 children. Now, what Edita talked about, what the couple from Limuru talked about, this is reality. I got a couple came to see me some time ago. The wife came along first, and she told me that they had been married for 18 years, and they've been trying to have a baby for 18 years. And bad luck was that she was married to the last born in that family, a gentleman. All the other, I think there were 5 boys and 1 girl. All of them had children, and you know how last-borns are. They're treated as eggs, and they're most precious, and everything. And the mother, because tradition in their society, the last-born was the one who actually stays with the mom, so they were staying in the same compound with the mother-in-law. Just imagine that pressure. So every single day she'd wake up and the mother-in-law would remind her that she doesn't have children. She would abuse her. She would even throw her out. And the husband, because he's the last born of the family, the most beloved of the mom, would actually do nothing. Now, they did go and have tests done. And guess what? The problem was with who? Was with the man. Now, and this woman, I really respect this woman, and I respect women in general, because you guys, the problems that you go through in order to bring children into this world is completely out of this world. And I can tell you here categorically that if it were men who were getting pregnant and delivering, the human race will not be there, because we cannot stand that pressure, we cannot stand that pain. So what happened to this couple? When she came and she told me, Daktari, I have tried. You know, I cannot tell their family, the wider family, that actually the problem is with their son. So I have protected him. I have kept his dignity because of that respect. So what they had to do, they had to move away from the house that they had built in the same area, in the same compound with the mother-in-law. They went actually to go and rent a place away from her, so that at least some of that pressure would be away from them. Now, so these societal pressures are there, and they are horrible. Some mothers-in-law actually bring a woman straight home, say, now this is going to be your wife, because I want to be named. I want also my name to be, to continue.
Okay, Daktari, allow me to stop you at that point. I hear we have another caller before we lose them. That is Isaac from Beta, who is joining us again. Isaac, what's your question or comment?
Hello.
Yes, Isaac.
Yes, my question is, hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Daktari has said that there are some labs that are good to be visited. Can he help us to know these labs?
Some labs?
Yes.
Aha. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Isaac. Okay, so I think this is where we delve into the treatment. Yes.
Right. Now, Mr. Isaac, in as much as I would say, I don't want to mention names here because that would be tantamount to, advertisement, but there are some labs which are well renowned. If you sort of send me a message, I can direct you to some places where I send my patients to, so that should not be a problem. Now, when it comes to treatment, first of all, the first thing we need to know is what is the problem. This couple has come. We have talked with them. We have taken their history. We have taken the history of the lady. We have taken the history of the man. And we have done some tests. What tests have we done? We have done a sperm test for the gentleman. We have done a blood test, a hormone test for the lady. We have done an HSG. We have done a scan. And we have all these results together. So what I normally do is I analyze these results with the couple. I start with the lady and say, look, these are your results. This is your AMH. Your AMH says that it is 3.75, for example. This is a good level of AMH. Considering your age, you are 28 or 26, this is a good AMH, meaning that you have a good number of potential eggs still remaining. So tick, AMH is fine. It's not an issue. So eggs are not an issue. Age is not a factor. Your TSH is okay. Your TSH is 1.4, and that is fine. Your prolactin is, let's say, 17. The cutoff is 35. Your prolactin is fine. So hormones are okay. It is not an issue. Next, let's look at the HSG. We look at the HSG. I normally don't read the report because sometimes when you read the report, you actually become biased. I take the film and look at it myself. And I actually explain to the patient, I say, look, this triangular structure that you're seeing here, this is your womb. And now look at the tip of my pen and we trace the tubes together all the way. The tubes look okay because what happens in HSG is that we give the patient a contrast which is supposed to go through and spill out. If the tubes are okay, it should spill out, and you should see that sign on the film of the picture. So look, it looks okay. And then we look at the report. Yes, the report does confirm that actually your tubes are fine. So tubes are okay, hormones are okay. Let's go back to the scan. How were your periods? Your periods were heavy, they were painful, plus minus, and they were clotty. Aha, so there were clots. Are there clots every month? He said, yes, there are clots. How heavy? I say, hey, Doctor, sometimes those clots are big. So when you do the scan, I look at the lining myself, because usually when a patient says that there are clots, it could suggest that there could be something on the lining, what we call the endometrium. So when I look at them, I do the scan myself, I look and say, look at your lining, and there is something inside here. Can you see that green cross? Yes, just follow that green cross. There is a structure here and there is another one here, and the thickness of that endometrium or that lining is abnormal. It's 15 millimeters, whereas it's supposed to be, let's say, 10 millimeters. So it means there is something inside there. So this could be a cause of your infertility. All right? So we have finished with the lady. So we go to the gentleman. Look at the semen analysis. The volume is fine, it's 3 milliliters. The pH is okay, 8, let's say 8. The concentration is 20 million. The total count is 60 million. Motility is 70%. Normal forms are 15%. And no white blood cells, no red blood cells, no agglutination, that is sticking together of sperm. So the semen sample is perfect. So there's no problem on your side. The problem could be most probably on the lining. So we have sort of eliminated until we've come to where the problem is. So what are we going to do with this thick lining? So what we need to do, we need to take you to theater and insert a camera inside the womb, and then look inside the womb in real time, and then whatever is there, we can actually do what? We can actually remove it without cutting anywhere. And when we do that, now we come back now and start now helping this couple to now start having, having their baby. Now, if there are issues with the man, say for example, you find that the volume is okay, but the numbers are low. That concentration, let's say, is 6 million instead of 15 million, meaning that the total count is going to be 18 million instead of 40 million. And motility, let's say, is 30% instead of 40%. The normal forms are 3% or 2% instead of 4% or more. So you say there's a problem here. The goodness with that is that once we've eliminated the possible causes, you don't smoke, you don't chew mirror, you don't do this and so on, and you are eating, normal diet, then we can actually give you some medications. And these medications are normally taken over 2.5 to 3 months. Why? Because normally in the reproductive cycle of the man, the sperm takes about 2.5 months to 3 months to actually mature. So we give them these medications for 3 months. They come back for a repeat test. And most of the time, once they've done this test, and everything is okay, so we take it from there. Yes.
Okay. Now, Daktari just give an example of one of the treatment methods he would use on the guy or the woman, depending on the problem. Again, the treatment is dependent on the problem.
On the problem.
Okay.
On the problem.
All right. So it's a person-to-person basis. That's why he's just giving an example of what he would do for such a case, like he's mentioned. Now, we have Frederick from Muthurwa joining us on the phone. What's your question or comment?
Okay, I'm Godfrey. I'm Godfrey Young from here, Nairobi. And please allow me to express my question in Kiswahili. Niko na swali tu moja.
Aya, tafadhali punguza sauti ya TV.
Sawa. Niko na swali tu moja tu. Ni shida pengine kuwa na watoto wa jinsia moja, wa kike peke yao ama wa kiume peke yao?
Sema, uliza tena?
Nasema yani kuna uwezekano pengine mtu kuwa na watoto wa jinsia moja, wenda pengine ni wa kike peke yao ama wa kiume peke yao. Shida inaweza kuwa ni nini?
No, that is a different
okay.
need, but thank you for calling in. Perhaps you can touch on it briefly as we take a break.
Again, that is societal. Now, we also see cases whereby a man has only girls. Jinsia moja, jinsia ya kike. With the men, when they have boys only, usually it's not a problem. It's the girls when you have the females, that is when there can be an issue. Now, usually Bwana Frederick, shida haiko mbali. Shida ni sisi wanaume, kwa maana sisi ndio tuna zile chromosomes XX zikikutana na ya mama unapata mtoto wa jinsia ya kike. Na ukiwa na chromosome ya XY ikikutana na ya mama ya XX unakuwa na mtoto wa jinsia ya kiume. Kwa hivyo sisi wanaume, sisi we are the ones who decide whether this child is going to be a boy or whether it's going to be a girl. Sasa ukiwa na watoto wa kike peke yake, usiseme makosa ni ya mama. Sisi ndio tunakata kauri.
I know this is a huge revelation for most people, but that's the truth. Men are actually the determinant of the sexes of their children. At this point, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll take more of your questions and your comments, and also get to understand the journey of treatment for editor and, of course, Samuel and Jacinta right after this break.
Go beyond with Kenya's fastest 4G network, Popote. Dial *544# to get your data deal of the day.
Here at NMG, we're working very hard to ensure your favorite publications, Daily Nation, Business Daily, Taifa Leo, and the East African are readily available. In a bid to support the efforts to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, NMG has ensured our staff, our distributors, and their staff adhere to set guidelines. At our printing plant, all staff are required to wash their hands before entering the factory and must be wearing a mask. All workers either change their clothes on entering the factory or wear an overcoat. We are keeping doors open to avoid our staff touching door handles repeatedly. With our automated printing, contact with the newspaper is kept to a minimum, and at the packing process, the staff observe social distancing. Vehicles used to transport the newspapers are disinfected daily before the newspapers are loaded, and our delivery staff all wear masks and wash their hands regularly. Our vendors ensure that they sanitize every time they handle money and wear their masks at all times. NMG is proud to be able to safely meet your information needs. Stay safe, stay informed with our favorite NMG publications.
Emerging issues in the tax environment. Influencers and the digital services tax.
A number of them already are subject to withholding tax. Don't you think then it is two taxes on the same income, and that should be a matter of concern?
Exemptions on minimum tax.
The whole idea behind that exemption was to look at entities whose prices are controlled by government.
And the status of VAT refunds.
Government has been giving about 1.2 billion per month. This has been up to 1.7 billion.
In the next edition of Business Redefined, we host the Commissioner for Domestic Taxes at the Kenya Revenue Authority.
New Year comes with New Year deals. Renew your corporate subscription and get a bonus. Subscribe to Nation e-paper for 3 months and get 1 week absolutely free. 6 months and get 2 weeks absolutely free. 1 year and get 3 weeks absolutely free. To sign up, visit epaper.nationmedia.com or email subscription@ke.nationmedia.com. Offer valid till 28th February 2021.
Acha nikae kwenye mpini hafi njaa.
Na kila mmoja ana riziki yake.
Mimi vile na hustle hivi, hii ndio jasho langu.
Kila Jumanne katika NTV jioni tutapata makala maalum ya jasho langu, kuangazia raha na karaha, heri na shari za watu katika kazi na vibarua mbalimbali.
Mimi Max Riala na kuunda glass ndilo jasho langu.
Na hii ndio jasho langu.
Naitwa The African Dogman na hii ndio haso yangu. Nami ni Daniel Mule na hili ndilo jasho langu.
I'm in Watamu along Kenya's coastline, which is commonly associated with tourists and white sandy beaches. But the locals have found hidden treasures in butterfly farming.
When I go back to school, I hope that I can sit for my exams without being disturbed by another lockdown, and I hope that I would have managed to thoroughly keep up with my studies by then also.
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Maybe just to share a few tips. Number one, do not use this line. Let's agree. What are you still waiting for? Or, why can't you just adopt? Hey, adoption is for everyone. It's not just for childless couples. And trust me, we know our kind of setup. Most couples who've been married for over 3 years are probably trying, or you never know, maybe they just suffered a miscarriage you have no idea of, or maybe like us, we're still trying to come to terms with our medical conditions. Number two, if you don't know what to say, silence. Do not refer to us as barren or sterile. Yule tasa, yule gumba. I understand those are English terms, those are Swahili words, but from where I sit, they sound very, very insensitive. I know there are times when you plan a baby shower and you're wondering, what will she feel if I invite her? Invite us, do not lock us out. In fact, if you're pregnant, just let us know. And if we don't come for the baby shower, please bear with us. Probably we are not emotionally stable. Do not use comments like, your husband is probably shooting blanks. Because let me tell you, there are men who actually have medical conditions that affect that aspect of their lives. So you could be joking about it, and someone is actually struggling.
The words of editor Hadassah Tripp. She has been on this journey for 15 years. She knows all too well how that shoe pinches. And she is executive director at Waiting Wombs Trust. And as you can see, we're also joined by Jacinta and her husband Samuel, and still in studio with me, Dr. Kireki, our fertility expert. And Hadassah, you put together the trust because you needed to help others along, walk with those that were in the same shoes as you. When you it comes to treatment, and that's the basis also of our question of the day, the challenges of accessing the same, how do they look like? What are the challenges around this?
Need another 30 minutes to respond to. Like, this is wide.
Well, in a nutshell.
Yes. In a nutshell, I think one of the reasons I founded Waiting Homes Trust, like you've correctly said, is to offer a support group for people like me, people like us who've walked the journey for so long, or who actually still fresh in the journey, maybe waited for 1 year, and they don't know what to do after failing to have a child for the period. Treatment, like Dr. Kireki mentioned, varies from with different conditions. But like in my journey, I had surgical processes. In fact, after that engaged talk, I was in the theater 2 days later. I can't forget that. But finally, sad thing that happens is diagnosis of some conditions takes so long. So long that you try this procedure and you have hopes of having a child, but somehow it just doesn't work. I think our health doctors are working on it, and I can say that it has since improved because we have a society where patients are now well informed. You come to a support group, you say you've been trying for 2 years, you don't know what the problem is, and the first thing is, have you seen a doctor? What have you done about it? And we've actually partnered with doctors, we've partnered with laboratories and different organizations and individuals that support our trust. And some of them, we just channel you, direct you to get help. There are people who are waiting who honestly should not wait, if I were to say that. Because their issues could be so little and can be fixed if only they were to see a fertility specialist. Sometimes I wish I went for my excision surgery earlier in life because I think I struggled or suffered with this condition for too long. It is unfortunate that I had to wait for so many years and finally had to go for my excision surgery out of the country. Very expensive, not covered by insurance, but how many people can afford access the same or have that privilege that I had? You see, not so many have that opportunity. So honestly, I think we need to empower people who are trying to have children. First of all, mentally, because Gladys, I had to go for counseling. I had to go for therapy. I'm actually taking a counseling course because I realized most people are in this space and they just need someone to talk to. So yes, founded Waiting Homes Trust, which is a support group, and we handle matters medical, not as medics, but by channeling people to the right fertility specialists or just to hospitals, not necessarily the specifics. By encouraging people to seek help for their mental health, by encouraging people to eat well, take care of yourself, and do not define yourself by the ability or inability to have a child.
Very well said. And Jacinta, when you talk about the expense of the same, you were telling me you were surprised with the gift of Njeri when you had actually taken a break from trying and all the treatment because you are waiting for your health insurance to go through.
Yes. We would say that it is not a very affordable process, especially if people are not well, like maybe, like us when we got married, we were not very good in terms of finances. But it's good that we tried our best to get medication. We did quite a number of tests. And at some point, when we had done like all the tests and we were sure that we had the 2 cases of azoospermia and the blocked tube, then we had to seek more medication, and that became too much for us. And that's when we went for the medical card so that we would get more medical care. But it was unfortunate that we would not access before it was 1 year. So we had to wait for 1 year. And I think Baba Jerry may be having a clearer statement on the same because he was the one taking care of that.
Okay, so Samuel, the fact that you had been told you had to wait for a year before you could access the medical cover, what were the reasons?
The reason is that they said first the maturity, the card must mature, and so we had to wait for a year. And just like Jessica just put it, it wasn't very, it was very expensive. And so we had to wait. But in the process of waiting now, we are still hopeful. And as well, we got some medication, like for my side, in terms of boosting the sperms and all that. I got some medication. And also the doctors also recommended that I should be, we change the lifestyle in terms of diet, and we should not be anxious. So anxiety again was maybe part of it. And then they said, just be free, don't be anxious. And so in the process of waiting, that is when now the good news came of Jerry.
Okay, now Samuel, a quick one. When the insurance company told you that the card had to mature, if you were going into hospital perhaps for a flu or a diabetes test, would they have given you leeway to use it before a year?
Yes, they would have done that.
So the issue here was because it had to do with infertility.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Now we have a question from Pamela in Eldoret. Pamela? Pamela, can you hear us?
Yes.
What's your comment or question?
Thank you so much for this timely discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a concern on behalf of my client. I just want to comment. I have a family.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, they have a challenge. They have been diagnosed that the husband has an issue with his low sperm count, and he seems to be cooperating. He has not accepted, and the African setup, like the doctor said, when the family is having a challenge of infertility, they tend to think that the challenge is from the woman.
Mm-hmm.
I will request the doctor to address how they address the challenge of low sperm count, especially when it is affecting the man.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela, for calling in. And do we have another question on social media? Can we have it on the screen? Well, Christine Bernards is asking, does prolonged use or family planning affect fertility? Daktari, let's start from there.
So we start with the second one or we start with the first one?
Let's start with the fertility
second
issue,
one.
yes.
The prolonged use.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it has been, the fact that we are using contraception, hormonal contraception, the name itself means against getting pregnant. So what the hormones do is basically they stop the ovaries from working normally. Now, if we use them for a long time, the question was for a long time, we don't know how long it is. Normally, out there, for example, in Europe, we find ladies who have used contraception for 10 years, 15 years, and they're okay with that. This will have a knock-on effect further downstream. Why? You remember we talked about age.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start using the contraceptions at around 25 and use them for 16 years, you will be 35, 36. Already your reserve will have started diminishing. And this will have that effect of now struggling to get pregnant. Now, does it have a direct cause effect that if I take contraception, then in future I'm going to be infertile? No. What it may mean is that what some people think is that the fact that I'm using contraception, hormonal contraception, it gives me leeway to have sex the way I want. And that can actually now lead secondarily to infertility. But it is not the contraception itself which actually leads to infertility.
Okay, to the second question, I think you had touched on it, but just reiterate
Yes.
on how you deal with low sperm count.
The low sperm count, thank God, Pamela's client has a low sperm count, because there are some gentlemen who don't have any sperm. So with the low sperm count, number one, we want to find out what the problem is. We eliminate the possible causes of low sperm count. Once we have done that, a good lifestyle, change lifestyle, reduce the BMI, exercise more, and then we give you some multivitamins. And most of these multivitamins do actually help in the low sperm count. Usually we do a recheck after 3 months of taking them, the multivitamins.
Okay, and even as we were listening to Jacinta and Samuel, and of course editor reiterated the same, the cost of accessing treatment makes many couples go for years without the help that they need. What needs to be put in place to ensure that we level the playing field for all?
Very unfortunate, I must say that, with a lot of concern and with a lot of regret. I'm the Secretary General of Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. This is one of the problems that we are looking at, accessibility, because presently in our country, of a population of about 48 million, we have, I think, about 5, maybe 6 fertility specialists in the whole country. So we need to train. Training is important. Number two, we also need to sensitize the population. You remember some of the cases that we've listened to, they've been 4 years, they've been 5 years, and a long period of time trying to find out what the problem was. Edita mentioned that the problem of diagnosis took a very long time. So sensitize the population, sensitize the first line doctors, or midwives, or whoever is going to get in touch with these patients at the first time. If you see this issue, if the patient comes with these symptoms, you are not able to deal with that, please refer to somebody who is capable of helping these couples. So sensitization. Talking, the way we are talking like this, there are a lot of people who are watching, and I thank you very much, Gladys, for actually inviting me here and talking about this thing. Which people talk in whispers, which people talk in their bedrooms, which people don't want to talk out there. Just like, when the HIV infection started, people used to whisper and whatever. But now the conversation is out here. Edita mentioned about support groups. There are support groups where people ask questions are answered, they are directed to to doctors where they can get help. So social media is helping and has helped quite a lot. Number three, I think the government should also come in and help with the National Health Insurance Fund. You should also help, because as our couple from Limuru said, the card had to mature. I mean, if it was an infection, if it was a heart attack, would the card still mature? It will not mature. It's an emergency. And this is a disease just like any other disease. According to the World Health Organization, actually it says this is the 5th most common problem in the world. So you can see the extent of this. So these people need help. The other thing which we need to really think about, the insurance companies need to come on board and tell us why they say they cannot pay for infertility treatment, because they don't, and that is a paradox, because it is a problem, huge problem. 20% of the Kenyan population, if we work with 48 million as the total population of Kenya, 10% is 4.8, so 20% is 9.6 million. So we are locking out such a huge population out of access to healthcare, which is not right. It is criminal. It cannot be that way. So we need to work together. We need to work the social influencers. The society need to know. And then the other thing which people need to understand is that You don't have to go to South Africa or to India or to the UK. We were in the UK. I studied in the UK. I came here. So this help is actually available. So whatever you're going to get in the UK, you'll get it. You'll get it here at home, and you don't have to endure the hopeless weather that is in Europe. For example, now it's winter, it's cold, it's horrible, and so on. And there are several of my colleagues also who also decided to come back home, with this knowledge. So this knowledge is available. So working together in tandem, I think we can help society, to reduce or even to eliminate this stigma, which is like a bad smell, unfortunately.
Oh, very well said. Now, editor, even as we bring this conversation to a close, your parting shots?
A parting shot would be, there are times you can do just. Actually, you can't do much at certain points in life. Like, let's say you've tried conceiving forever and it's not happening. I just want to let you know that, first of all, you are enough, you are complete as you are, and God has a plan for you. Please get help, talk to someone, do not suffer in silence. Reach out to us. We are here to support Waiting Homes Trust and Dr. Kireki and the many social media groups online. Reach out, get help. But do not allow childlessness or infertility to define you. You're complete, you're whole, you're enough, you're special, and don't allow anything to take that away from you.
Very well said. Coming from editor, she is been waiting for 15 years. As she said herself, she is still hopeful it will happen. And that gives a lot of encouragement to many people. And Jacinta and Samuel, for you, you give the hope that marriages can stay together despite the fact that they do not have children. Please, your words of encouragement to other couples. Let me start off with Samuel.
Yes, Gladys, what I would say is that every couple who are joining together in marriage, they should not be very, very, looking for like they want to get a child immediately. If the child comes, well and good. If the child doesn't come, they should appreciate that children is a blessing, or they come as a blessing from God. And there are things which are beyond us. We just need to trust in God, hope in God. And I will tell those people who do not have children as per now, a child for now, as per now, they should be very hopeful. The Lord can do anything. There is nothing which is impossible with God. Even if the time has passed, God can still do a miracle, and they are going to get a child, because in His own timing, everything will be beautiful.
Okay.
God bless.
All right. And definitely Jacinta, who has been a recipient of great support, especially from her husband. Jacinta, your parting shot.
Yes, thank you, Gladys, for hosting us. And we would want to say to the couples that are going through the same issue is that we would encourage them to do it together. And I would encourage and ask our husbands to be just very supportive to the wives, so that they're able to go through the process together. And with that, it means that at the right appointed time of God, things will happen in a way that anyone can't, like what happened to us, in a very miraculous way. So they just need to be together, and they just need to support each other, so that they can be able to handle the pressure from outside. Yes.
Very well said. Thank you, Samuel and Jacinta Kiugi, who are joining us from Limuru, Editor Hadassah, Executive Director at the Waiting Wombs Trust, and of course, Dr. Kireki Omano, who is a gynecologist and fertility expert. This was a very informative conversation, and I hope the conversation continues, because awareness of the same needs to be drummed in. Well, there we have it. Our conversation of the day is done for today, but tomorrow we have another one, and this one touches on something I think we all have dealt with. House help drama. Now, to be specific, we'll be looking at the house help boundaries. You've had as a house help one time or another where they've literally gone beyond the parameters laid out for you, for them in your home. How do you handle it? And yet these are the same helpers you need to run your home so that you can go and eke a living. We'll answer that question and many others tomorrow morning from 7 a.m. See you then.